Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hi, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
In our last episode, we talked about not restricting families. Go listen to it.
It's a good one.
Yeah, because it's not maybe what you think we would be saying about it. Okay, so go listen. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking about restricting yourself a little bit.
I was wondering where you were going. That's perfect.
Thank you. There's a lot of information in the world about the range of typical development at different ages and the skills that children need to acquire in order to have success in the future. Now, will they acquire every skill? No, not necessarily. But the path we need to take them on to building skills has been defined by a range in the ages. So, you know, I sometimes visit programs who report out progress to families, right? They're reporting progress. They're talking about the children's development. And I ask, what do they use to reflect on their observations of children and decide where that child is in the range of development? They look at me like, use? What do you mean use? And I say,
how does this happen?
How does this happen in 2024?
Yeah.
So all the states in the United States, and probably where you are, if you're not in the United States, have standards. And those standards tell us, here are the areas of development and the areas of learning that you should be working on with the children. And by the way, here's what you might expect to see at this age, this age, this age.
Yes.
Right? Yes. We have milestones that come out of research-based information, like from the CDC in the United States. The Centers for Disease Control has multiple web pages having to do with what do we expect to see. There are publishers who put out information in the world that I know people right now are thinking that stuff is so expensive. Some of it is expensive, but some of it not so terrible. I recently ordered a tool that's put out by Red Leaf Press. I'm going to give them a shout out. They have tools to help you to observe either in a center-based program or a family childcare that give you information about here's what you can expect to see in the areas of development and the areas of learning. And folks, it was, I'm talking US dollars, it was under $30.
That's cheap.
Right.
For that kind of thing, that I think, because some of those things are hundreds of dollars.
There are thousands sometimes. There are other tools that sometimes programs use that cross over to the state standards. Two very popular ones, the ones that are used most often, are Teaching Strategies Gold.
Yes.
And HighScope's Core Advantage. They all give us research-based standards and objectives to observe when we're working with children and to aim our lesson plans for. So over time, if we're going to go back in my career, we didn't always use these. I will admit it.
No, I don't think we always use them either. Like even in my, like when I went to college, I remember them talking about standards, but it wasn't as a forefront as it is now.
It is definitely more in the forefront. And for that, I think we seriously have the QRIS to thank. And if you're like, what's the QRIS? 2 episodes ago, 2 episodes ago, we defined abbreviations and acronyms. So go listen. But I do think that because of what the states in the United States are trying to do with quality and what I know other countries are trying to do too, because I've seen things about the UK and what they're trying to do in early education. I've seen things about like Finland and what they do. I've seen things about things around the world. Everyone's trying to improve quality because we all understand that the early childhood years are when the most brain development takes place. So everybody's trying to do the best they can for these children. And I submit to you that the best you can If you don't have a tool that you have paid for in any way, no matter how cheap or expensive, go to the standards of your country or your state. And please look and see, what should I be focusing on with these children? Because early education, folks, is not about creating products and sending them home.
Right. And I think there's many people who still think that.
Yes.
And like you said, like if you're not willing to purchase something, you don't have to, because it's New Jersey at least, and I'm sure every state's like that. It's right there on the internet. You can get the standards on a website and they're all right there, and you can use those. You could print them out if you wanted to. Anything you want to do, use those to create your lesson plans. That's how I used to create lesson plans.
You may be wondering, why is this so important? And I think it's a few things. It's so important that you use research-based universal standards or particular tools in your observations and planning for children, because if we don't, we are filtering what we see through our own experiences, perceptions, and biases. And we need a tool that is standardized. That's why they're called the standards. They're standardized. They are not dependent on any one person's experience, bias, none of that. So it takes all that individual perception out, which is important for our conversations with families, which I think is a second reason why it's so important we use research-based objectives. When we're talking to a family and we say something like, your child seems to be a little behind in this skill. Here's what we suggest, as far as maybe further evaluation. Here's the practice we're going to do with your child, and we'll offer you some for home if you can. When we say these things to families, they're really only going to do it if they think like it comes from a neutral tool. They're more likely, not only, but more likely to do it. Because I can't tell you how many families will think things like, you just don't like my child. My neighbor's child does this and they're fine. If I can show them a neutral tool, like for example, state standards, and I pull that out and I say, here's what the state tells us about what is the widely held expectation of children at this age. Your child is here. That's behind the expectations for their age. And you can show them some document, some chart that comes from research, but not from you. I think that's worth everything.
I think it is too, because like you said, I think it's easy for the parents to be like, oh, they just don't like my kid. All the kids that I know do this, or whatever it might be. And it's easy for them to just kind of throw it away, be like, whatever, it's fine. He'll catch up. Right. But then if you have like the research backing it, then it's easier for a parent to be like, okay, I can take that. There's research behind this. If I need to go take him for evaluation, then I have this document that's this objective document. It's not me saying, hey, I just don't like your kid, or my bias coming through. It's like, no, according to this assessment that I did, or whatever it might be, these standards and these objectives that I did, your child needs this, or whatever it might be. And it's easier to go. Like if you need to go to a doctor, hey, here's the documentation. This is non-biased documentation that the teacher did.
Also, speaking of doctors, I mean, I don't think any of us would want to go to a doctor who just bases things on their opinion and not medical science, right? I want to know, what's the science behind this. That is the standards and objectives for early childhood development are like the science behind it, because they're based on research having to do with the development of young children. What is average? What is not average? Whether it's they're ahead or they're behind. Right. And it's based in science. And I think it's important that we take our own perceptions out and place this in the hands of science. I've had families when you show them the standards or the objectives, whatever you call it in your program, but it comes from a tool, a valid tool, and you show it to the families. And I've had them say, well, what do you think? What's your experience? If they ask me that question, I will answer it. But I'm not going to people with information that's based in my perception.
Right. I've been asked that question. What's your opinion?
Yeah.
What do you think? And I will give my honest opinion at that point. But up until then, I'm like, nope, it's all about the research, the objectives, the standards, because it doesn't matter what my opinion is necessarily, right? If the parents want my opinion, then it matters, but they might not want it.
That's true.
They might not want it. And it's not my
And
place
other
to
families
say.
do want it. Other
Yeah.
families do want it. They're like, you've been in this for a long
Yeah.
time. What do you think would be most beneficial based on the information you're sharing with me? And that's great. And I'm willing to share that and happy to share that.
Yeah.
But my initial conversations with families need to be based in something that they're not going to find prejudicial
Right.
in any way.
Right.
They also help us to plan. If I know whether a child is behind, within, or ahead of the expectations, it doesn't even matter. These tools tell us what's the next step.
Yeah.
What's the next thing you want to work on
Yeah.
with children? Some of these tools, which includes, by the way, in the United States, the state standards, give us strategies. They
Yeah.
tell us, here's
Yes.
how you can approach this, teach this.
Yeah.
Here's some things to think about. It's a great thing.
It is.
And I've also worked with teachers who are like, yeah, I know we have standards, but they never open the document themselves, or they are like fed, here's what you need to work on with the children.
Yeah.
Folks, open the document yourself.
Okay.
You're going to find strategies and
Mm-hmm.
information that you've probably never thought about. And other tools that you can purchase also have strategies.
Yeah.
So don't just go, okay, yeah, I know because XYZ.
Right.
Really go in
No.
and read this stuff to figure out what you need to know.
You should know it. Like, not just like, yeah, I know, like, no, like deep in it, like you should know it. Like, and I feel like if you want to be in a profession and be treated like the educated professional that you are, then you need to be knowledgeable in this stuff. Because this is the nitty gritty. This is what matters.
Yeah, that's the nuts and bolts of what we do.
And
What are we here to do?
yeah.
We're here to help to give children new abilities, understanding,
Yes.
skills.
Yes. And so when someone comes at you and says, oh, I don't agree with your lesson, you could be like, you know why this is a good lesson? Because of dot, 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 dot. And you can list all the way down. Here's all the objectives that we covered. Here's all the standards that we covered. Here's what we did. Here's what it provided. Instead of being like, it's just a good activity to do. I just liked it. You know, like you can, have a backup.
When I go into programs and I am their educational consultant, it depends what position
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Because I also do credential observations. In that
Right.
case, I don't say this, but when I go into programs and I go into a classroom and they're doing an activity and I say to the teacher, why are you doing this? I don't want to hear because it's pumpkin week. I don't want to hear that. What I want to hear is,
because it's what we've always done.
yeah, I don't want to hear that either. What I want to hear is something like, we're doing this activity because it supports the children's fine motor skills, problem solving skills. These are things that are
Yes.
in the standards.
Yes.
Right. I want to hear the things in the standards. I'm always also telling professionals, when you speak to families and you're sending them, a lot of people use apps now. You're sending
Yep.
them pictures of what the children are doing
Yep.
in the app. You need to tell them what standards
Yeah.
or objectives, again, depending on what you use and call it. What are the standards or the objectives that this activity supported? Use the big grown-up information.
Yes.
And say to the families, we did this because it supports fine motor skills, problem solving skills. It supports the children's curiosity and creativity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which are all in the standards. There are times when I'll say things about the standards to people and I'll be like, for example, when they don't fully understand what creativity is, I think this is a good example. And I'll say to them, there are standards having to do with supporting children's creativity. And if we're talking about children's creativity, the ideas have to come from the children, not you.
Yeah.
Let's look at the standard for creativity. And it often has to do with that the children are wholly creating on their own, whether it's through dramatic play, music, or the visual arts. In our state, there are actually standards for the visual arts.
There are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
And
the arts.
dramatic arts.
Yeah. For the arts.
For
like
all of the arts. Yeah.
separate from the creativity
Separated,
standard, which is creativity is a cognitive objective or standard.
Yeah.
And then we have separate standards having to do
Yes.
with the visual, the dramatic, and the musical
and
arts.
the musical arts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have those standards where you are? There's only one way you're going to find out. Go online, go online and look for it. And if you're using a tool like from an outside vendor or,
Yeah.
or publisher, and it doesn't specifically say the visual arts, I'm pretty sure you're going to have something in there that says like art, pretend play somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not saying where, but somewhere,
Yeah.
even if it's under cognitive, which are the thinking skills.
Yeah.
If you are with us today and you are not an early childhood professional, but you enjoy this podcast because you're raising children, go to the state standards or the standards where you are. Go to the standards, start to know them, because that's what the children need to work on.
And I would ask, like, if stuff's coming home in their folders and it just looks like something, and you can ask the teacher, like, what standard did this cover?
Yeah.
You know, that holds the teacher accountable, but also then, you know, like, hey, I can do something like this at home. If the teacher can come back at you and say, oh, we covered 5 objectives with that, 5 standards with that, be like, oh, that's something I can do at home too.
You know, you and I have heard from homeschoolers as
Yes.
well who listen to this podcast.
Yes.
And I just want to put out there that the standards where you live are not restricted to schools and center-based programs. You can use them if you are a homeschooler.
Yeah.
Get to know them.
Yeah.
So that you know
Yeah.
what is the focus here for this, what is typical or average for this age group that I'm teaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
They're
know,
all free on the internet.
they really are. The
Yeah.
standards from
The
from
standards
your
state.
from where you live, where even if you live outside the United States, you have standards.
Yeah.
Go look for them.
Yeah.
The CDC milestones I always warn people about. I just don't think they give enough on their
They don't
website.
give enough. And even like there is like a little like developmental assessment you could print out. It's 1 page.
Yeah,
It's like a checklist.
Yeah, it's not
It's
enough.
not enough. I mean, I've
It's
used
lovely, but it's not
for,
enough.
like things that I needed, but I'm like, no, it's just not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, folks. I hope that we've inspired you to at least look at the standards, even if you're working in a program where they're like, no, we're not doing that. Please go look at them.
Yeah.
Because they provide you with valuable information and strategies.
I feel like if you're a teacher in one of those centers or programs that does not use standards, doesn't mean you can't.
That's true.
You know, like you can, and you could just say, hey, I'm going to do it this way because this is how I teach and this is how I want to teach. And they can't say no to that, I wouldn't think.
That's true.
I mean, they shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are we now, Alison? A couple of episodes before our 300th episode?
Yeah. I think this is like, there's one, I think this is 298. And then there's one more. Oh my goodness.
We're gonna do an extra special episode for that one. We're 2 away, folks. It's like the countdown.
I know.
Okay. So if you have questions, you know where to find us. HowPreschoolTeachersDoIt.com or our Facebook page.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I just want to mention that I've been doing some things with my professional Instagram. If you're an Instagrammer, you can go to @CindyTerrebush, CindyTerebush, and see what I've been doing.
Oh, she's got some good stuff on there.
Yes, I felt the Instagram needed to be brought back to life from a place where it was. So there you go. All right, folks, we will catch you next time.
Bye, peeps.